Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this glorious, wonderful Sunday morning, and where we get to have a play date in spirit, because it's not just me doing the talking. We're here in a play date with spirit, co-creating all together. So when Reverend Joan asked us to send the titles for what spirit wants to say through each one of us, what came for me during this month of deeper seeing, SEE-ing, was Intercoastal Adventurings. And yes, it is the creativeness of spirit. I've come to own it and love it and know that that's a part of who I am, what I bring. So before we start though, let's start with a little joke, a little giggle. So there was a person who went deep sea fishing, or sport fishing, sometimes it's called. And this fisher person returned to the shore with a huge marlin. I mean, this marlin was as big as the individual dragging this marlin back, big and heavy. And so on the way to the cleaning shack, because there's a cleaning hut, I guess, when you go deep sea fishing. I haven't been, but I have been fishing as a girl, and you do have to clean those little babies someplace. So on the way back to the cleaning hut, this fisher person, passed another fisher person who had a string of minnows, a long string of minnows that they were bringing to the cleaning hut. And the person who had the long string of minnows, the second fisher person, looked at the first one and looked at the marlin and said, only caught one, huh? So this is about perspective, this is all about perspective and how we frame our thoughts and our perceptions. So I looked into the whole deep sea fishing, what it's about, because I haven't ever been. It is something on my list to do now that I've researched it. So deep sea fishing is something that is done in the deep ocean, and most importantly, for the title that Spirit sent through me today, it's in intercoastal waterways. And intercoastal waterways are at least 30 meters or 99 feet deep. Yeah, that's way, way, way deep down there. And what I read is it's only done usually in the Atlantic. I'd like to think that because the Pacific is a mighty ocean also, maybe it's done in the Pacific also. That's just my Pacific preference. However, in these intercoastal waterways is where the deep sea fishing happens. And so I was thinking about it. It's real clear to me why intercoastal adventuring showed up, because intercoastal deep sea game fishing is very similar to our lives. Because we in our lives, we're on this expedition. We're in a play date with spirit, and we're on an expedition. And sometimes we get to go to the intercoastal waterways. Sometimes we get to go really, really deep. And then other times we're just hanging around in the shallow parts. So I realized that our life is very similar to this. So first thing is you go into the intercoastal waterways. However, the second thing about deep sea fishing that I read about, which was important to me, because I used to get airsick. Yes, indeed, I did. However, sometimes it can be queasy. You can have a queasiness. You can feel some sort of unease and seasickness when you're doing this deep sea or game fishing. And so it's recommended that you bring meds. You bring some sort of medicine. And so then when I thought about that as it pertains to our lives, we're in these intercoastal waterways, adventuring in spirit, and sometimes we might need something to make our way through it. We might need something to help us in as we go deeper, 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 as we say in the willingness of spirit. Yes, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm going deeper. So before we get any deeper or farther into that, I want to tell you about a very interesting man that I happened to learn about recently, and his name is Jack Ma. I'm sure a lot of you know about him. Jack Ma is from Hangzhou, China. And Jack Ma, he wanted to go to college. So he took the college entrance exam. And when he took the college entrance exam the first time, you had to get a score of 120. He got a score of 1. So he took the college entrance exam the second time. And the second time he took the college entrance exam, he completely failed it. He didn't even score. The third time he took the college entrance exam, he finally did pass, and he just barely squeaked by to the minimum of what it took to pass. Okay, so after he takes his college entrance exams, and so because he just barely squeaked by, he had to go to what was considered to be a less prestigious school, and he went to the Hangzhou Teachers Institute. And this is in China, of course. Okay, so that's where he went. So he went there, he matriculated there, and then when he graduated, he decided to apply for a job. And he and 24 other people were applying for jobs at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. 25 spaces for jobs at KFC, and he and 24 other people. The other 24 people got hired. Jack did not get hired. He got turned down for the job at KFC. Okay, so he decided with his degree, what could he do? So he was going to teach. So he began to teach English at a local university, what we have called here a community college. I'm not quite sure what they're called in China, but a local university. Okay, and so he was just doing that, being himself, and living his life. And in 1995, he came to visit a friend of his who was living here in the U.S. And when he came to visit this friend of his who was living here in the US, what did he discover but the World Wide Web, the internet? And he discovered this. I mean, he didn't discover it himself. He became aware of it. I don't want to act like Jack Ma discovered the web internet, but he became aware of it. And what came to him is that he wanted to add value to life and he wanted to bring the web back to China. Okay, and so that's what he did over the course of years since 1995. And maybe you don't know, but who he is Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba. And Alibaba is the largest online commerce company and tech conglomerate on the planet. Yeah, this is just what Jack Ma did. And so Jack Ma realized that his life, in his life, he was doing some deep sea fishing and he was going to go on adventures in some intercoastal waterways. And the other thing that I would wager to say that Jack Ma realized too was that the castles within him, the castles within the self of him, as Teresa, as a reading from Teresa of Avila speaks to, that there were castles within him and he could stay in the outer court or he could go in the inner court. He could make a decision. And when we think about all the things that transpired in his life up until the point where he came to the US in 1995 and found out about the World Wide Web, I mean, he was really going deep and he was in what we might call some dark places. We might term it that way. However, we all know that, at least I know, I can speak for myself, the best things in life come from having been in the dark places. Having allowed myself to know without fear and to stand without falling into that trap of false evidence appearing real, and to stand in trust and faith and to be in the dark places, to be in the depths of life as it goes, as we're talking about, like being in, I mean, I'm not a deep sea swimmer, but being in 100 feet, the depth of 100 feet water, it takes some stamina, it takes some strength, it takes some trust, it takes some, it takes a lot of things. And if we realize that the same thing is happening in our lives, that sometimes we're in the 30-meter part of our lives and we come equipped. We have everything that it takes to do this intercoastal adventurings. Okay, so you're probably thinking like, so, all right, I love this story about Jack Ma, and maybe some of you already knew about Jack Ma. I kind of knew about him. However, the thing that comes clear to me is just as we all are in our lives, Jack was also, and I want to refer back to the Falling into the Arms of God reading, where it says we are all souls with our own castles, but not all of us may desire to move from the outer to the inner court. Happy to remain on the outskirts, we do not come to know the wonderful place or the riches that wait for us on the inside. And think about it. There are so many riches that wait for us on the inside. And as I was reading this reading and being with it, what else came to my mind is Tootsie Pops. Now, Tootsie Pops are my favorite childhood candy. I had a lot of favorites, but they were the top of the list. And it's something that we were allowed to eat as a kid, because in the family I grew up in, we were allowed to eat a lot of processed sugar. It was just a thing in the 50s, and I'm not gonna condemn it or have some judgment about it. However, I was thinking about a Tootsie Pop, and there are several ways you can eat a Tootsie Pop. You can take that Tootsie Pop and you can just lick it all the way. Just lick it, lick it, lick it. You can take that Tootsie Pop and hold it in your mouth and let it all dissolve in your mouth. Or you can bite into it, because as kids, you have really strong teeth. You can bite into it. But the main thing is that when you get to the center of that Tootsie Pop, in the center of that Tootsie Pop is this ooey gooey, yummy chocolate, or it's just chocolate in there. And really it's kind of like the reward for having traversed the outside of the Tootsie Pop. And so when we allow ourselves to know, just like this reading from Falling into the Arms of God, that they're castles. We are castles. Our life is castles, and there's many layers. And if we, in our ignorance, stay on the outer court, well, then our life probably may not move along in the ways that we desire. However, when we go into the inside, when we go into like the inside of the Tootsie Pop, when you allow yourself to drill into the inside of the Tootsie Pop of the life of spirit that you are, then in the center, there it is. The glory, the might, the majesty, the wondrousness, the spectacularness, I don't even know if that's a word, but the spectacular, sacred expression of spirit that each of us is. We each get to know that as we do that, as we go into the center, that this is what happens as we allow ourselves to go into the center of who and what we are. And when we're doing that, it is done in these intercoastal adventurings because we're going deep. We're going deeper than deep. And sometimes that going deeper than deep, it doesn't feel so good. That deeper than deep sometimes feels like, oh, spirit, if I fall off the edge, what's going to happen? Sometimes sometimes the deeper than deep in my life, I don't know about in your life, but in my life, the deeper and deep is deeper than deep is an absolute faith walk. And for me, it's a faith walk, skip, hop, jump, cartwheel, twirl, dance, tango, salsa, cha-cha. However, it is all these things. It is really, really, really standing in our faith and knowing that because of the faith that is the truth of who and what we are, it's going to be okay. And the way we get to allow ourselves to build up that faith, I mean, there are several ways that we build up faith, but one of the real surefire ways to build up faith is remembered radiances. You know, if you look on your life and you remember the things that happened, even in the last 3 hours, possibly, or 4 hours, where your faith brought you through and it turned out in a way completely differently and much more spectacularly than you may have thought. If you allow yourself, you know, I was thinking about this morning, our wonderful education department that Reverend Joan leads, and I was thinking about the fact that we're going to have practitioner training starting, and it was just in my heart. It showed up in my heart, and I think the reason it showed up in my heart is because when I started practitioner training, Reverend Joan is my teacher, and I went to her, and when I started practitioner training, I was a working flight attendant, international flight attendant, which meant I had to go when United said go. And so the thing is, you've all been on an airplane when you want to go places in differing times. So it wasn't like I could just work Monday through Friday. I worked differing days each week, and each month it was different. Every single month it was different. I did get to do what we call bidding and choose. However, it was by seniority, so it was different every month. And I went to Reverend Joan before I started practitioner training. I'll never forget it, and said, Reverend Joan, I'm really concerned because I don't know if I can be here I think the classes were every Tuesday for a year, because I in my flying career, that's not been available to me. And Reverend Jones said to me, well, we're going to set that intention right here and right now. We're going to hold it right here and right now. And setting the intention, as well as standing in the steadfast faith for me of the fact that setting the intention and going to Reverend Joan and being with her about it, being in the presence of the wisdom and the knowingness of Reverend Joan about it, my faith led me to believe, okay, that's what's going to happen. I want to tell you, in the 2 years that I was in practitioner training, I didn't miss not one class. Classes got changed, classes got rescheduled. We had holidays, In 2 years, I got the same day off for 2 years. First time that had ever happened to me. And well, by the time I went to practitioner school, I'd been a flight attendant for probably 25 years. So this is a way that faith can show up in our lives, that I just stood in the faith of knowing this. This is how the faith can show up in our life. So back to our intercoastal, that showed up for me for someone, I think. So I'm glad I got to say it. And thank you, Reverend Joan, forever, ever, ever, and ever. So this story about Jack Ma and how he went, deep sea fishing, and when he took himself into the intercoastal adventures of life. And then now, as I said, he was the founder of Alibaba. He has actually sold Alibaba to go on to be a philanthropist. That's what he's doing now. He's a philanthropist, and that's what he does. That's just who he is now. However, and our Tootsie Pop analogy of our lives being like a Tootsie Pop, and in the center is the ooey gooey wonderfulness. And you can tell I'm a chocolate person. So you're probably saying, okay, this sounds really fun. This sounds like I'm really playing in the fields of spirit. It sounds like, okay, this intercoastal adventuring, okay, in the depths of spirit, this sounds really wonderful. And Reverend Verona, exactly in what way does this happen in the life of spirit that I am leading? So I was with this a lot, and I realized that our life is like the intercoastal adventurings, that we're out there deep sea fishing because we've chosen to not skim the surface of life, because the fact that we're all here first, that we've chosen to grow and expand and bloom and blossom in the oneness and bring what it is we chose to bring before we got here. Because like Reverend Jones said earlier in our service, this is a very, very powerful time, and we all chose to be here. And this time cannot unfold in its own most wondrous way without each one of us. That we are all interconnected, and that there are infinite probabilities of what can happen as a result of our having chosen to be here. So I'm thinking, okay, so we know we're on this journey. We know we're on an adventure. It's similar to deep sea fishing. And of course, it has the thrills and the joys and the whatever else that comes from deep sea fishing, because it sounds exciting. It feels exciting. And so our life has those things. And also it has the depths. It has the depths of life. That also can be an excitement if we reframe how we look at it. And also in this place we are of possibly the deep sea fishing part of life. The other part of deep sea fishing is you bring something with you. You might bring some balm with you. You might bring some salve, some elixirs, some tinctures. You might bring some meds with you for when it gets to the place where it makes you queasy, where it makes you upset. And that's where we come in today, in that there are 3 ways that we can do this as we are in the intercoastal adventurings of the life of spirit that each one of us is. And these 3 ways that we're sharing today, or we're co-creating here today together, goes back to the very basics of New Thought, Ageless Wisdom. Because the three ways that, and you're not even going to need to write them down, the 3 ways that we can really navigate this and bring our own balm, our own salve, our own elixir, our own meds, our own comforter with us, is with our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Yeah, easy, huh? Our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And when that came to me, I went, oh, Spirit, it's so wonderful. Just like going back to the basics. I used to take ballet for 20 years, and my wonderful ballet instructor, George Latimer, used to say, always take a basic class. Always go back to the basics, because when you take the basic class, it enriches any other thing you're doing. You're on those point shoes, it enriches you being on those point shoes, because the basics are really about most importance. So some of our basics in New Thought, Ageless Wisdom is thoughts, words, and actions. So if we delve into the thoughts, our thoughts can be the truth of the splendor of each one of us. Really, when you think of the splendor of who and what each of us is, and I'm not just thinking of the splendor of what Matt is, I'm thinking of the splendor of what Verona is. You know, I'm not just thinking of the splendor of what Sarah is, I'm thinking of the splendor of what Verona is. Do you see what I'm saying? We get to have the thoughts of the splendor of what each one of us is. And recently I heard of this word, the Swedish word is called lagom. And it's a Swedish word that means all sufficiency. Isn't that amazing? This word lagom, each one of us is lagom. We are the all sufficiency of spirit. You know, everything that spirit is, each one of us is. Everywhere spirit is, each one of us is. That we're each one of us, and we get to hold this in our thoughts, you know. And also I don't want to just be coy or not overlook this, that I know what you're thinking. Okay, yeah, Reverend Verona, I like those thoughts. However, what about the other thoughts? The other thoughts that show up, the other thoughts that come knocking and pounding on the door, or the other thoughts that sometimes for me show up in the middle of the night. The other thoughts that show up as I'm moving along, as I'm leaving one level and moving to another, or as I'm going on to the next growth pattern for me. And those thoughts, we get to give thanks for those thoughts. We get to bless those thoughts, and we get to let them know it's okay. It's all right. You are not needed here. Thank you for showing up, and now I send you on your way. And for me also, those thoughts, what really helps me is to say something silly to those thoughts, like, oh, you silly rabbit, what are you doing here? Or something like that. Or you willy-nilly thing, what are you doing here? Or you little ninny, what are you doing here? Whatever word, actually, I usually plug into the little Verona inside to figure out the words to say to those thoughts, and let her tell me what to say to those thoughts. Be aware of her telling me what to say to those thoughts, because she is so much more playful and so much more silly and giddy than the adult me sometimes. So the thoughts thing first. So I'm not saying we don't have those thoughts. I'm not saying that I may not think I am not enough. However, I also get to remember this Swedish word, lagom, that I am the all sufficiency, that there is more than enough. or something like that. So that's the first way that we can navigate our way through this wonderful journey we've all said yes to when we incarnated here. Second way, easy one, is words. And of course, in New Thought, Ageless Wisdom, our words, we use them. First, we know that our words have prospering power. Thank you, Catherine Ponder. Our words have prospering power, as well as our words, we use them in affirmations. And I don't know if you all know, I'm sure you all are, but if you're not, I'm inviting you right now to go on the Agape Bay Area Facebook page every day. And did you know that Reverend Joan, Reverend Cindy, and myself have an affirmation on there every day? And this started during the pandemic, if you don't know. Now you know. And I want to read you the one for today by Reverend Cindy, the affirmation. I embrace my innocence, my joy, and my wisdom. I am the parent I never had, showing up to love me unconditionally. Now, when those words fall on your ears or fall on your heart, they're wonderful, they're comforting, they're soothing, they're serene. And there's all sorts of affirmations. Another affirmation that I was on Instagram and saw the other day is Reverend Michael has this wonderful, of course, he has catchy affirmations, but this affirmation was, I'm dropping the story and revealing the glory of God. So see what I mean by words? We can use words in ways that enhance our lives, that uplift our lives, that remind us of who and whose we are. Because each one of us is just, each one of us is the beloved of the beloved, the delight of the divine. So that's our second way. And these are really basic things, but once again, thoughts and words. And the third way is actions. You know, in New Thought, Ageless Wisdom, it's often said, you treat and move your feet. I believe that's Ernest Holmes saying, but you treat and move your feet, which means you get up and get it moving. So the move your feet part, the action part, the first part of the action part that came to me is we get to spend our time in the presence of kindred souls. I like that word, kindred. It's an older world name. Or it's a word I learned when I was younger, shall we say. But anyway, we get to spend our time in the presence of kindred souls, which is what we're doing right here today, you know, community, each of us. And our community could not be what it is without the input of each one of us. Every one of us brings something spectacular and wonderful, you know, and like the Mike Dooley reading said, that we bring amongst you, we actually begin to design our future from amongst the most favorably infinite probabilities. And also we end up rearranging the players and the circumstances. Yeah, we end up rearranging the players and the circumstances of the matrix of life. And that is ours to do. We get to be the action. And in the action, we also get to bring our gifts. The action part is bringing the gifts that each one of us has here, each one of us, that is innate to each one of us. My gifts are not the same as your gifts. And we all bring just unique, unrepeatable, bespoke, custom gifts. And also in the action part, we get to give thanks. We get to give thanks before any of this even happens. In the action part, we get the part of our action is giving thanks, being in a place of gratefulness for whatever is going on. We get to do all this. So easy things we get to do for our intercoastal adventurings into the depth of the life of spirit that we have all chosen, especially we chose this time. Come on now, everybody. We chose a time that's not all easy. We didn't choose like the Eisenhower 50s where life was just easy and fun and all that. No. We all chose the 21st, this century, and we chose this time and this place and this space. We all chose to be a part of everything that's going on. Everything that's going on, pandemics, wildfires, floods, hurricanes. We chose it because we know that I know that within and as each one of us, we each bring something that is an integral component for the healing of our planet and the healing of the world and the transformation of the world. So these three things, thoughts, words, and actions. You may be thinking, okay, so how's this happening? How's this working in your life, Rev B? And up until about 9:30 or 10 o'clock last night, I wasn't quite sure what the example was going to be. And for those of you who know me, like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, it's shut-eye time. It's time to shut the outer eyes. However, it came to me, and last evening I realized, I hadn't sent an email to Reverend Joan. So I was really actually put my glasses back on and sent it to her. And then it hit me. Okay, so these thoughts, words, and actions. So I am in the process of making sure that I bring our Agape principles and teachings out into the world. And part of the ways I do that is, of course, teaching, having the wonderful blessing of teaching classes here. But another way is I have a website, and on my website, I I talk about those things. I teach about those things. I bring the gifts that I came here with. I want to bring them to the world. I want to make sure that when it's my last moment here, I have completely depleted all the gifts that are mine to bring, and which is what we all get to do. I have completely given in great generosity and love and joy every gift that I came to bring. So I have a website. So I was looking at my website and it was looking kind of, it wasn't looking very exciting. Okay. And so I asked the best website person I know, well, can you help me with it? That person's name happens to be Leah Levine, my daughter. I want to give her props. So I went to her and said, could you help me with it? And so she and a couple other people really looked at it and said, yeah, it's kind of limp. And so I rewrote the content. And then she helped me to redo the pictures and rearrange things, mostly just so that everything that is mine to share with the planet, I can get out there into the world. And of course, we all know it's an electronic world now. I mean, ask Jack Ma. And so she and I were doing all of this. We were working on it together. She gave me homework and gave me a date by which the homework was due. Yeah, so I really got to stay committed and be, stay on task and really be the truth of who and what I am. Okay, so it got all finished recently, I think last week or the week before, and it's lovely and gorgeous. And I realized, okay, now this is the way I get to bring my gifts to the planet, and also through me share our Agape teachings and principles. Well, last night when I was sending the email to Reverend Joan, I had a new email and I hadn't looked at it. I had looked at emails like before I had my dinner in the evening, and then I usually don't look again because especially I want to just be with what it is that I'm sharing in the speaking in the message. And it was an email from a young woman who I knew 50 years ago. A young woman. I used to live in Wichita, Kansas, and it was a very tumultuous time in my life. And it was very, 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 I was most definitely in the intercoastal waterways. It was deep, 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 and it was dark. And it sometimes looked like I wasn't going to come through. And this was a young woman who, at the time that I lived in Wichita, Kansas, I was with my uncle. This was a young woman who had been the 5-year-old child of his girlfriend. She had found me on the internet. She had found my new website and told me, I love the website. I love you. And I, even back then, when I was a little 5-year-old girl, I loved being in your presence. There was something about you that you brought. And then she said, so let's be in touch. And then we're going to call each other tomorrow and all those sorts of things. This is phenomenal to me. I don't know why I'm in awe every time Spirit does something like this, but I am, and I'm thankful. I'm so grateful that I'm still in awe. And this is part of, me, like I used my thoughts about, okay, how do I get it? First, who am I? What do I bring? And I know the things I bring peace, joy, love, enthusiasm, ecstasy, willingness, all these sorts of things. And then the second thing was my words, affirmations. When I realized, okay, I have an assignment to upgrade this website of mine, I used affirmations. And I was walking around my house saying, I am creative, I am intelligent, I am discerning, all sorts of things. I was walking around my house saying all these things to get myself into this website. And also one of the affirmations I used was, and this website is absolute perfection right here and right now already. All is mine to do is to accept that, to really step into that acceptance in steadfast faith, in the faith of our forefathers and foremothers into the faith. And then the other action was I sat down and rewrote it. And I also made an appointment with my marketing expert and kept the appointment with her, even though I'm her mom and she's my daughter. And when she comes over my house, we just have fun and giggles together. Kept the appointment, rearranged it, and got it out there. So thoughts, words, and actions, got it up and out there. And look at what happened. I'm just so, even this moment, it's not even 12, it's been 12 hours. I'm still just so in awe of the fact that this young woman, 50 years ago, I hadn't been in touch with her. And I know. Yeah. I'm blessed to be in my 7th decade, and I give thanks for it, for making it this far. However, that she, because of this thing that I use thoughts, words, and actions, got in touch with me. And now we get to love each other. We get to reconnect with each other, and we get to be the truth of who and what each of us is. So I'm asking you to embark upon the adventures of the intercoastal adventures of the life of spirit that each one of us is. And as you do that, I am inviting you or let's just get real about it. I'm demanding from you that instead of being in the outer court of your life, go on in the inner court. Go on into the center of that Tootsie Pop of the life of spirit that each one of us is, because that is what we came here for. We get to be the center of the being of the one power, the one presence, the one might, the one majesty. And you get to use your meds, or we can call them elixir, balm, meds, habits, practices of thoughts, words, and actions. And then we get to be an integral part of what Reverend Jones started us off with today. We get to open in the portals to Lion's Gate. We get to stand in the opening of that, and we get to bring our highest and greatest and best of spirit, each one of us in our own custom and spectacular and non-repeatable way, with ease, effortlessness, and the basics.